Why is this terror and murder necessary for this system in order to ensure its order and its ongoing functioning? The answer is that from the beginning of this country, white supremacy has been poured into the foundation and built into the institutions and the ongoing functioning of this system. Specifically with regard to black people, the centuries of oppression they have suffered, from slavery days to the days of Jim Crow segregation and Ku Klux Klan terror, to the present time with the continuing systematic discrimination against black people in every part of society, employment, housing, education, healthcare, and on and on. All this has resulted in a situation where masses of black people today, and in particular youth, have been robbed of a means for a decent life, with many maintained in conditions of desperate poverty and deprivation. This, again, is not simply because those who are in the seats of power and deciding government policy are racist, though that is true of most of them. It is fundamentally because of the nature of the system itself and the historically evolved requirements and dynamics of this system of capitalism imperialism. Now that is a big mouthful. The nature of the system itself and the historically evolved requirements and dynamics of this system of capitalism imperialism. So let's break it down. This country was founded on the enslavement of masses of African people, as well as the genocidal subjugation of Native Americans and theft of their land. And its further development involved the conquest of huge parts of Mexico, reducing people of Mexican origin to second-class status as well. This required the propagation of racism to justify all the horrific oppression. Then, when the Civil War broke out over the question of slavery, and even when slavery was abolished as a result of that Civil War, given that white supremacy had been and remained such a crucial part of the glue holding the country together, the only way to put it back together on the foundation of the capitalist system was to once again forcefully assert white supremacy. That is why, very soon after the end of the Civil War, black people were subjected to the system of Jim Crow segregation, backed up by systematic terror punctuated by repeated lynchings, while the genocidal aggression against and theft of the land of Native Americans was stepped up, and immigrants from Mexico were subjected to ongoing discrimination and violence by the enforcers of this system.
Police have released that video showing officers beating Tyre Nichols. The video is every bit as horrific as Memphis officials had warned it would be. Body camera footage and video from surveillance cameras from January 7th show officers hitting, kicking, and pepper spraying Tyre Nichols. In the video, 29-year-old Tyre Nichols can be heard calling out for his mother. Nichols was hospitalized and then died 3 days later.
In that video, you can see he was already on the ground after he was pulled over at that other location. The officers in the video repeatedly punch and kick Nichols over and over again in the video. At one point, you can see they stand him up, they hold his hands behind his back and begin punching and hitting him and wrestle him down to the ground again.
Tyre Nichols was a loving father to his 4-year-old son. He was the youngest of 4 children, the baby of his family. He worked for Federal Express, but he lived for his passions, skateboarding, photography, and beautiful sunsets. He was an inspiration to those who knew him, and I will let those who loved him most tell you in their own words.
He didn't have a negative bone in his body, like at all. Energetic, outgoing, funny, goofy, always had a smile on his face.
My son, I know everybody say mothers say they had a good son, everybody's son is good, but My son, he actually was a good boy. He had my name tattooed on his arm, and that made me proud because most kids don't put their mom's name, but he did. My son was a beautiful soul, and he touched everyone.
Tyre brought something out of me to make me feel like, hey, you don't have to do that. You don't have to follow a trend to be loved. You can be yourself. You can skateboard, you can ice hockey, you can do whatever that you want to do.
He was the kind of guy when you come in the door, you can't walk past him without getting a hug.
To the hospital with a bad concussion. Plus you hit 4 times, but it hit your spine. Paralyzed way down, now you're wheelchair bound. Never mind that, now you lucky to be alive.
I just watched the 4 videos that were released by the Memphis police. The 4 videos that depict the brutal savagery of the cops who murdered Tyre Nichols. The whole time watching, I could hear in the back of my head the pain and the cracking in the voice of Rovon Wells, the mother of Tyre Nichols, this morning at a press conference when she spoke of her loss. My heart, obviously, is with her and the family. But look at these videos. Look at this unmitigated savagery. Everyone who acts in rebellion, has been in the streets, or who will be in the streets, is righteous to do so. But we have to ask the question, how long are we going to watch this go on and on? I've spoken recently about how to understand these murders and what to do about it, and the need for a real revolution to put an end to this. Bob Avakian, who I follow, has a real strategy for how we can make this revolution and build a new society. Where never again would the people entrusted to protect and serve be allowed to get away with this kind of monstrosity. But you are going to have to ask yourself, how long are you willing to put up with this?
So I'm here with Noche Diaz, who you just saw. Noche is a national spokesperson for the Revolution Clubs. Noche, welcome back to the Revolution Nothing Less show.
This is where we need to be.
It is, and you, it's quite moving that this, when I saw that video you made right after the videos had aired of the brutal, wanton killing of Tyre Nichols by the Memphis police. In that video, Noche, you asked 2 questions, how long will this go on? And how long will people put up with this and settle for anything less than revolution? So why did you pose these 2 questions?
Well, those were the 2 questions that had been jumping out at me when watching those videos. How long is this going to go on? And you cannot help but feel the sense of responsibility when you're watching that, of what are you going to do while this is going on in this society? The level of horrificness in these videos has to be confronted. The crimes of each of the cops involved, each of them, and the severity of them needs to be confronted when talking about what needs to be done about this, but also the feeling you get when you watch that and you know what's coming and you know how the story ends and you've seen too many things like this and you know how many people have seen this go on and on. The questions that jumped out, how long And when are people going to stop putting up with anything less, and what's going to really put an end to this? So that's what jumped out to me. And that's what I feel like a lot of people need to be confronted with right now. As these videos have come out, people have begun to see that, or some people have begun to turn away, or, or telling themselves, I've seen it all before, whatever it is, or there's nothing we can do, so why watch it? No, watch it. Confront those questions and pursue the answers. And that's why we're here on this show today.
I think in many different forms, what you just posed comes up for just a lot of people. When we opened with the video of what kind of person Tyre was. You see him skating, you hear about his life, and then you mention the videos, and you see the very opening video, which people somewhat pass by, when they just come up on him and treat him like he had just done the most heinous act ever. They never identify anything. They just treat him with such utter fucking disrespect. And he's trying to comply, and they just go after him. And I think this has raised a question for a lot of people. And I know this actually from the Revolution Clubs in Chicago, where people then started telling how they had been done the same way, but didn't end up in the same place that Tyre ended up. I just think we just can take another second here, another minute or two, just to talk about that, a question that you've brought up and posed for people. And I want to pause on it. How long does this go on?
You're right to bring people back to how this incident opens up with this brutality. And for people to really confront that. And like you said, in Chicago, when people were watching this together, and part of what you're forced to confront is not just how horrific what they did to Tyre was, but how this is almost an inevitable outcome, almost a logical conclusion of what is done every single day, all the time, everywhere in this country. And at every point along the way in this video, you can pause it and pose the same thing. And this goes on every day, all over this country. And everyone who's watched this and felt that, you need to be speaking up the way those comrades in Chicago were and telling these stories, because as inevitable as it seems and as it feels when you're watching that video about where this is going to end, it is not inevitable that this keeps on going on and on and on. It happens because we live under a system that needs their police doing that, and we can put an end to this system. Again, watch those videos. Look at how they pounce on Tyre. Totally lacking any humanity in the eyes of these police was this young black man. Because in this country, for millions and millions of people, especially black, as well as Latino and other people of color, but especially black people throughout the whole history of this country, their humanity has never counted for anything more than as things to be used up, things to be making profit for some other class of people. And today they don't even have a way to make a profit off of them. So there's millions of people they've just discarded into prisons, or having them set up in situations where they're killing each other in the streets, or else they're killed off by the police on top of that. And generation after generation, this has gone on for some 50 odd years. And they've not been able to cover it up anymore. It is becoming sharper and sharper to everyone that talking about this cop or that cop or something small that can deal with this is not going to cut it. And so people are scrambling. The people who run this are trying to figure out a way to get people back into accepting it, or to pull it all back together and say that they have some answer, but they have no answers. They have nothing, no way under their system that they can do without this kind of murder and brutality. And this is not only a condemnation and a declaration of the bankruptcy of this system, and a call to everyone who has any humanity left in them to get rid of this system. It also is a light on the possibility that exists in these times, when this is so sharply posed, when there is no answers being brought forward by any of the people in power, to actually go and wake people up and shake people up and confront them with that question of how long are you going to be part of putting up with anything less than revolution and getting rid of this system once and for all.
Yeah. So Noche, you spoke about use the word system, and systems being bandied about a lot now. One of the things that's really hung up a lot of people, confused a lot of people, upset people, is that this was all black cops doing this. And on top of that, as you pointed out in your statement, they had body cams, there was sensitivity training, all these other reforms, and still this horrific, brutal murder took place by these police. And so people are going to the policing system is the problem, but really, what system is responsible for the murder of Tyre Nichols and thousands of other people? Is it the policing system, or is it the system that this policing actually serves?
It is the system that these police serve. And people can go to the article for more, but also there's long answers and short answers, and Bob Avakian gets into both of them. And I do want to read for people something I think that's, very important in the book Basics, from the talks and writings of Bob Avakian, especially at this time when the reality and the ugliness of what these police do is hanging out, to not let them get away with covering it up by just talking about the culture of policing or the system of policing. And this quote from Basics cuts right through a lot of that. Bob Avakian says, "The role of the police is not to serve and protect the people. It is to serve and protect the system that rules over the people. To enforce the relations of exploitation and oppression, the conditions of poverty, misery, and degradation into which the system has cast people and is determined to keep people in. The law and order that the police are about, with all their brutality and murder, is the law and order that enforces all this oppression and madness." Again, he emphasizes and walks you through there. The system of capitalism, imperialism, the system of exploitation and oppression is what these police serve and protect, and it is why they do it the way that they do.
That book, Basics, is something that everybody who's agonizing about this situation should get into. It's available online at revcom.us, so you can get a copy. It's available as an ebook. Bob Avakian has called this a toxic combination, this systemic, historically evolved, the segregation, the discrimination, the white supremacy, and how it's woven together with the capitalist system, a system that depends on exploiting people and sets people against each other in every realm. People need to get into this in depth. There's really, you could spend an hour, 2 hours, and actually a whole course in why this is so. But we have a tremendous resource that in 2020, when there was the beautiful rising in opposition to the brutal, wanton, again, police murder of George Floyd, Bob Avakian wrote a series of articles. This is in 2020. And on our website, revcom.us, you can find this collection of articles, including the article from which we took the beginning of today's show and illustrated just the first few paragraphs. Racism can be ended, but not under this system. And there's correspondences from prisoners about that article. All of this is a treasure, a trove of understanding about why all these reforms, whether they come from good intentions or they come from people who are looking to get in on the system and become politicians and all this other kind of stuff that will just keep the people oppressed, all of whatever, you have to get into this understanding. And so I think it is a very important thing that your statement and that we today are talking about. If you want to end this kind of wanton police murder, you need to overthrow this system through an actual revolution. And in addition to getting into Bob Avakian on why we need an actual revolution, why only revolution can solve this problem of this wanton police murder, as well as mass incarceration, brutality towards all of our youth, there's a solution to all of this that's concentrated in this Constitution for a new socialist republic. And when we have a system that's its foundation, its economic foundation, is proceeding from the needs of the people, both to live a decent life, but also to be able to thrive and be part of a struggle to emancipate all humanity. You need a radically different security force with a whole different set of aims and objectives to get to the point in a society in the future where there is no more exploitation exploitation or oppression, where you don't need such a security force. So this is a subject, Noche, of another discussion, which we really should have soon, because this isn't going away, which is why we need a revolution and what we're preparing for. What I'd like to do to close this segment is to show the end of your statement, because you really put forward a forceful call for people to get involved in the movement for revolution. So I want to thank you for being on the show and for making that statement, and you're going to come back.
That's right.
All right.
We who follow Baba Vagian this year are determined to put an actual revolution on the map in this country, where people no longer go along with all the BS dead ends that keep us trapped in the same old system, fighting for crumbs and promises that never deal with the problem. And we are determined to build a force in this country that is preparing millions and that is acting today to stand up to these outrages, to defend people who are coming under attack by the violent enforcers of this system and the fascist thugs who want to make it even worse. All is part of preparing and building up the strength to make a revolution in these times where it is so clear they have nothing good for the masses of people, no future for humanity. But we have a future in fighting to make revolution, nothing less. And you, as you're out there righteously rebelling against this, need to look seriously at what it's going to take to end it and become part of the force that is determined to do that right here in this belly of the beast.